What if I asked you to explain why something is wrong, and you couldn't? Not because you don't believe it's wrong, but because you literally can't find the reason. What if your strongest moral convictions aren't built on logic, but on instinct? And by the end of this video, you'll understand why your brain makes moral decisions first and invents reasons later. Let me take you into one of the most unsettling psychological discoveries of the last 30 years. The work of Jonathan Haidt. Haidt ran a series of experiments that left people speechless. Not confused, not uncertain. Speechless. The phenomenon was called moral dumbfounding. And here are some examples. The incest scenario. Participants were given this scenario. A brother and sister, Julie and Mark, are on holiday together in France. One night they decide consensually to have sex. They use protection. They enjoy it. They decide not to do it again. No one finds out. No pregnancy, no emotional damage, no harm. The participants were asked, was what they did wrong? Most people said, yes, absolutely. And why wouldn't they? But then came the follow-up. They were asked, why? People gave reasons. It could give birth defects. It could damage their relationship. It could emotionally scar them. But here's the twist. The experimenter reminded them that, well, they used contraception. There were no consequences. They both felt fine afterwards and no one was harmed. And suddenly, silence. People paused. They laughed nervously and they struggled to come up with explanations. They said something like this, well, I don't know, it's just wrong. That moment where someone holds a strong moral judgment but can't rationally defend it is moral dumbfounding. The incest story wasn't the only one. Haidt designed multiple scenarios that removed harm, leaving only a violation of what feels sacred, pure or taboo. And the reaction was often the same, strong condemnation followed by confusion when asked to explain why. What about the dead chicken? So the scenario is a person finds a chicken that has died naturally by the side of the road. It hasn't been hit, it's fresh. They take it home, cook it thoroughly and eat it. No disease, no harm. No one else involved. Most people immediately say this is wrong, but when asked why, what's the logical harm? The chicken is already dead, no suffering occurred. Yet people feel disgust and struggle to justify it. What about the cannibal scenario? Jennifer walks into a pathology lab. A body donated to science is about to be cremated. Jennifer is vegetarian but thinks it's irrational to waste perfectly edible meat. She cuts off a piece, cooks it and eats it. The person is dead. They consented to scientific use of their body. No one is harmed. No one even finds out. Again, strong moral outrage. But why? There is no victim, no pain, no measurable harm. The violation is not about harm, it's about sanctity. And then there's the flag and the toilet scenario. The scenario is a woman finds an old American flag while cleaning her house. She no longer wants it, so she cuts it into pieces and uses the cloth to scrub her toilet. No one sees her doing it. She owns the flag. No one is harmed. Still, for many people, this feels deeply wrong. But what's the harm? This scenario was designed to trigger moral reactions connected to symbolic purity and loyalty, not physical damage. And what about the dog scenario? A family's dog is tragically killed by a car in front of their house. They've heard dog meat is considered delicious in some cultures. Rather than bury it, they cook it and eat it for dinner. The dog is already dead. It doesn't suffer. No one outside the family knows. Again, people respond with disgust and condemnation, and again, when pressed, many struggle to articulate a concrete harm. Across all of these variations, something fascinating happens. When harm is removed, moral condemnation doesn't disappear, it simply becomes harder to justify. People often cycle through explanations. It's disrespectful, it's unnatural, it's disgusting. But when pressed on consequences, they often arrive at, well, I just can't explain it, I just know it's wrong. And that is moral dumbfounding. Haidt later described moral reasoning using a powerful metaphor. Your mind is like an elephant and a rider. The elephant represents your intuition, fast, emotional, automatic. The rider represents your reasoning, slow, deliberate, analytical. We like to think the rider is in control, but in reality, the elephant moves first. The rider's job is often just to justify where the elephant already decided to go. When it comes to morality, intuition fires in milliseconds. Reasoning shows up afterwards like a lawyer building a case. So let's bring this into your life. Think about politics. Think about religion. Think about cultural traditions. How often do people debate, but neither side changes their mind? It's not because they lack information, it's because their elephant has already chosen a side, and the rider is just defending it. Moral dumbfounding reveals something uncomfortable. You are not as rational as you think. But here's the deepest layer. This doesn't make you stupid, it makes you human. And Haidt didn't stop there. He proposed something called moral foundations theory, suggesting that morality is built on intuitive foundations like care versus harm, fairness versus cheating, loyalty versus betrayal, authority versus subversion, and sanctity versus degradation. Different cultures and political groups emphasize different foundations. For example, some people are highly sensitive to harm and fairness, others are deeply sensitive to sanctity and loyalty. So when two people disagree morally, they might not be disagreeing on facts. They're speaking different moral languages. So let's bring this to your development. In Become a Person of Value, one of the key principles is admitting you're the problem. Moral dumbfounding forces humility. It forces you to ask, why do I believe this? Is this conviction reasoned or inherited? Am I thinking or defending? Growth begins when the rider stops pretending it controls the elephant. Instead of saying, I'm right, you start saying, that's my intuition, let me examine it. And that shift is power. Here's the danger. If reasoning only justifies intuition, then intelligence doesn't make you more moral. It makes you better at arguing. The smartest people aren't always the most open-minded. They're often the best at constructing rational defences for emotional positions. That's dangerous in leadership, it's dangerous in relationships, and it's dangerous in business. If you're building a mentality, discipline, clarity and strength, then you must train yourself to pause between intuition and justification. That gap is where maturity lives. So next time you feel morally outraged, pause and ask yourself, what emotion fired first? Try to argue the opposite side and notice when you get uncomfortable. That discomfort, well, that's your elephant. And if you can observe it without being controlled by it, you're operating at a high level of consciousness. Moral dumbfounding isn't about weakening your values. It's about strengthening your awareness. Because by the end of this video, I want you to realize something powerful. You don't become a person of value by clinging harder to your beliefs. You become one by understanding where they came from. The strongest minds aren't the loudest. They're often the most self-aware. And when you master your intuition instead of being mastered by it, well, that's when you lead. If you like this episode, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, follow, and just a quick shout out to our sponsors. Strong Coffee Company, protein-packed coffee for energy and clarity. Use code Vancrux1 for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com. And then there's More Labs, clinically proven hydration and recovery drinks. Use code Vancrux1 for 25% off at morelabs.com. And finally, liquor gummies, electrolytes and vitamins for hangover prevention. Use code Vancrux1 for 20% off at liquor.com. That's liquure.com.